Ready? Okay. Testing. 1, 2. 1, 2. System up.
Hello, and welcome back. This is a little bit overdue, I know. What can I say? Life's been mental, and there's been some big things going on in the Andrew household. Those of you that have been following me on Instagram probably know what I'm talking about. But I'm going to save that for another time, because this week I am bringing our listeners back onto the mic, and I have got the incredible Laura Shah. Laura is a Beat ambassador, and she shares with me her experiences. So we're going to talk about her experience with anorexia, that she was diagnosed with at quite a young age. We're also going to be talking about her experiences of suicide. So that comes in the form of a suicide attempt, but also experience of somebody in her life committing suicide. So we get in there, we get deep, but you will listen to this podcast and hear what Laura's been through, and you can't help but feel just as if there is hope, there is positivity. You know, Laura's been through so much, but she is so honest and real, and she's got such a great outlook on life. It's infectious. So I really want to say thank you to Laura for taking the time, being with me on the podcast and sharing her story. I think that you guys are really, really going to love it and connect with it. And if anybody wants to, you know, step out like Laura has and share their story, I am more than excited to share it. I hope you guys are all doing well. It's been a bit of a crazy time, but stories like this connect us together. So thank you again, Laura, and let's just dive into it. And welcome to Tribe Talk.
Hello.
Hello. I'm very excited. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm really excited to be here and talking about something. It's my first podcast, so.
Oh, we're taking the podcast virginity.
Yeah.
Oh no, you'll be fine. I've been told I'm very gentle, so you don't have to worry.
Oh.
That's a really awful thing to say, isn't it? Oh my God. Wow.
I love an innuendo.
I know. Panda Tribe Talk has been cancelled for the foreseeable future. So I guess the best thing to kind of say about this segment is, as I've mentioned before on the podcast, this season we are opening it up to different people, and this time it is the lovely Laura's turn. So Laura, give me a little bit of an introduction. Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, so as Emily said, I'm Laura. I am 24 years old, and I currently live in the southeast of England. I think I sort of volunteered myself to talk to Emily on her podcast, probably through resonating with Emily quite a lot initially when I first started following her, just having similar mental health experiences. We've both recovered from an eating disorder, and just moving forward in our lives. So I was quite excited when Emily posted up about needing some more normal people, shall we say, on her podcast. I've got quite a lot of experience within eating disorder recovery, and I work with Beat as one of their young ambassadors. So sort of spreading my version of recovery and helping others in their recovery, and also people supporting people. And yeah, I work full-time in a care home, so that's been quite hectic at the moment in the current climate, but quite a helping person, I think, in general. So when I had the opportunity to come and talk about all of that, I thought it was really exciting.
Yeah, definitely. When you reached out, I was like, yes, this is exactly why I wanted to open it up. So we could have people like you come on and kind of share your experience and talk about your own life. And I think I want to add on to that as well, that you have the most magnificent tattoo on your back I've ever seen in my entire life.
Thank you. That's actually one of my big parts of my recovery as well. I can get into that more later, but basically I sat for 3 whole days at a tattoo convention having my back tattooed. So a lot of pain went into that.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. I'm proud to wear it now, though. It's like a bit of armor.
I mean, it is incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
So I guess tell me a little bit about what you want to like share with the tribe today. Is it like your story? Is this the place to share your story? Is it, what you're doing? Give me a little bit, and it can be both. It can be both.
I think probably a mix of things. So I think when you have an eating disorder, you don't necessarily box yourself into that. But even through recovery, I was always very focused on talking about my eating disorder recovery, and there's so many other aspects to that side of me that aren't necessarily from the anorexia. And a lot of what I've learned through therapy is like the multifaceted sides of it all. So I'd quite like to talk about that in general, and also just like, I don't like the word spiritual growth because it sounds so I don't know what the word is, but it sounds very not egotistical, but it's quite trendy at the moment, I think, spiritual growth, but definitely towards that sort of area, just like growing yourself as a person. And what I've learned post recovery, because there comes a point when you reach a point in your eating disorder recovery and it's not necessarily all that you think about anymore, and there's so many other things that open up for you, and they can actually challenge you a lot more than you originally thought you were, because being recovered, you think you're back to a normal life, but there's still so many challenges around your mindset that aren't necessarily food focused, but they can be quite limiting. So I think sort of challenging yourself, just experiencing things again in a normal way, maybe, and like having the courage to actually do that. So those are the sort of things that I'd probably be quite interested to talk about today.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it then. So give us like a little bit about your experience with an eating disorder. You mentioned that you had anorexia. How was it? How long did you have anorexia? When was your period in when you went to go to get treatment? What was kind of that story?
So I think my journey of being unwell was probably relatively short. I got treatment quite quickly when I was ill. So I would say I probably started to develop my disorder from the ages of around 12 and 13. I'm quite a perfectionist and always have been as a child, and I was quite a highly intelligent child as well. So I think that all sort of accumulated to a disorder at some point. But it was really quite heightened probably at the age of about 15. I was really not coping at all with anything. I'd sort of isolated myself from all my friends at school. I was religiously going to the gym every day for like 2 or 3 hours. My family had noticed I'd become a vegetarian to like sort of restrict my food intake, and they weren't vegetarian. So there was quite a lot of changes that sort of showed up quite quickly, I think. So my mum found my diary, which is so teenagery of me, but she found my diary, and in it had some like, well, it had basically all my disorder splurged onto these pages. Sort of, I'd write down what I'd eaten, what I hadn't eaten, things like that. And she found that, and she sort of marched me to the doctor's office and was like, we need help. So I quite quickly got referred to my local CAMHS team, and I was treated as an outpatient there for I think 3 months. But basically I didn't really get much treatment. They kind of gave me a meal plan, saw me each week to weigh me, and then when I was weight restored, that was it. They discharged me. So I didn't really get any sort of treatment for my eating disorder. So I was discharged just before my 16th birthday. And then sort of after that, because I didn't have any coping mechanisms to deal with everything that had happened, I'd gone from clinically underweight body to a healthy weight, which was quite traumatic for someone with an eating disorder anyway, to be handed this body that you really don't want. So I spent sort of the next few years in quite a lot of turmoil, like not really knowing how to cope with things because my coping mechanism had been taken away from me, but I hadn't been shown any other way to deal with things. So I struggled quite a lot with self-harm, and I think most people that age are drinking anyway, but I think I was quite like harmfully drinking. So as an 18, I'd literally just turned 18, so I was out every weekend anyway, but I'd be drinking in the week quite a lot. There were a few days where I'd have a glass of wine before going into sick form, just because I couldn't actually cope with the idea of being like out and about. My anxiety was terrible. And then quite a bad event happened in the December just before Christmas. So I think this was about 6 or 7 years ago now. I'd come to sort of like this big build up of everything that had happened, and I just couldn't take it anymore. So I ended up taking an overdose. It wasn't enough to do like detrimental damage to me, but it was enough to stop quite a few things for a long time. So I ended up in hospital just for like a few hours while they like helped me, and then they sent me home. But the next day, this is so traumatic for me, like my mother's boyfriend killed himself. So obviously all the support that I probably would have had wasn't there all of a sudden, because obviously I can't take away from what had happened to her boyfriend. That was so horrible, and obviously as a family we all felt that. And to see my mother like so upset, like she'd dealt with the fact that her daughter had like overdosed the day before, and then she'd lost her boyfriend the day after. So I kind of stepped up into mum role at that point, because I've got two younger sisters. So yeah, that was quite hard for me. I think I just got on with it, and it wasn't even a thing in my brain by that point. I was like, right, I need to get on with this. I need to help look after everybody.
Kind of put everyone else first before you.
Yeah, and I think at that point in time there wasn't really another option for me to not do that. I can't really blame anybody for me having to do that, because my dad lived abroad at the time, and obviously the situation was just terrible. So like there wasn't really any way to avoid me having to step up in that way. But it definitely meant that everything that I had been going through was just blocked for a long time. Like it wasn't like I'd got over it or anything, but I just put this like I put a blanket over it and was like, right, we'll deal with that later. And I think that it just built up again and again and again. So that following September, I went to university, and I just wasn't coping. I obviously lived in halls, and like my flat that I lived in, we all had our own bathroom, and it was a shared kitchen. And there were weeks, like some weeks I wouldn't go out of my room because I had the bathroom there. I could go and get water if I needed to. And I had some food in my room, and I'd literally be like barricaded in my room for like a week at a time, just where I wasn't coping. So I ended up leaving university after about 3 or 4 months and came home. And that was probably like the best thing I've done, instead of continuing on, because it wasn't for me. And I don't think I needed to go at that point in time. Like I went to Leeds, so that was probably a 3 or 4 hour journey from where I live now. So I think it was foolish of me to have done that, but I think I just needed to get away as well at the same time, to allow myself to process what happened.
Yeah, it sounds like you had this huge like period of just kind of chaos, and you basically were just trying to walk through the motions of it. You know, you kind of walked through the motions of your treatment. You'd done what you were supposed to do in treatment, but you know there wasn't really it sounded like it didn't really help down deep on the inside.
No.
And then the rest of your life was kind of reflecting that, where it was just like, right, I'm just going to go through the motions. I'm going to keep working to, you know, get to university or whatever, you know, the goal was. And then you get there and you're like, wait, this isn't right. And like, I can completely get that, because I was the same when I went to drama school. And I think part of you is just like, well, everyone else is doing this, so I've got to do it, so I'm just gonna just keep stepping through. But you know, my heart really goes out to you when you talk about the fact that you had this overdose, and then the next day obviously you lose your mum's boyfriend. Like, I can't even imagine how. Did you just shut down, like emotionally, do you think?
I think so. The let alone him killing himself being traumatic, the way that it happened, my mum wasn't with him when it happened. She was going over to see him that day, and she actually called the ambulance for him. And because she'd called the ambulance, she was a suspect. So my mum was actually taken into custody that night. So she was in a prison cell, and we weren't allowed to stay at my house because the police had to come and search it.
Oh my God.
So we all had to go and stay in a hotel, and my mum came to the hotel at like 4 or 5 in the morning when she was released from custody. So that, and then obviously I think my sisters and my dad had flown over from Germany where he was living, and he was staying at this hotel. So I think my dad drove my family all back home in the morning, like my mum and my sisters, and I just waited at the hotel. My friend was going to come and get me because I needed some time on my own. So I think I had like maybe an hour on my own there. So that was really, it was nice for me just to be on my own at that point in time. But once I'd had that time, that was it. I just sort of went, okay, right, we've got to deal with whatever else is happening now. And I think as you can understand, like my mum did not cope with it at all. So I think seeing her need that much help, it just sort of, my brain just went into like cruise control and was like, right, we're going to go for this now.
Yeah, sounds like you were there for everybody else, but you didn't have somebody there for you. And that's not a shade on anybody. That's just, you know, the situation that happened, because I mean, it's a horrible turn of events.
Yeah, so I think going to university from that, I think it gave me the time to actually turn my brain off and let my body process what had happened, I suppose, because living at home, my mum was there and my sisters were there, so I couldn't really break down that much, I suppose. So I think having a breakdown at university, I think anyone else who was in that situation would probably rather be at home to have that breakdown. But for me, I think it really helped me because I didn't have to put on that front for anybody else. I was on my own. My boyfriend at the time was living near where my university was, at his university too. So he would sort of check on me as such. So I had someone there. But by the time I'd come home, I was sort of out of like the darkness of it all and was able to sort of like pick myself back up a little bit. But I think throughout all of that time, from like my initial recovery, I did relapse quite a lot with my anorexia, but probably not in very noticeable ways, just a sense of control, I suppose, which, as you can probably understand, having had one yourself, it just gives you that bit of security every now and then when you probably need it, even though it's probably not the best form of security.
Yeah, it's kind of a way to control the chaos, isn't it? So you know, it's, and a lot of the time people will look at an eating disorder and think, oh, it's all about the food or it's all about the way the person looks, but actually it's more about control, isn't it? And kind of being able to like control some part of your life, which you know, from what you said, there was very little control over your life. You know, it just sounded like you just being swept along with this wave, and then you ended up at university on your own, and it was like, you know, you finally had that space to be able to, like you say, like break down, and that's horrible to you know, to experience, but it sounded like it was actually what you really needed to do, and you needed to be there to be able to do that.
Definitely. And I think like I'm quite a lone wolf a lot of the time. Like I would rather do things on my own. I not in like an avoidant way, but I just really prefer being on my own a lot of the time. I don't have I have a lot of patience and kindness for people, but I also don't have a lot of energy to give people when I'm on my own. So I think because of my job working in a care home, I'm with people a lot. It can be quite draining. So when I get to do things on my own, I really do enjoy it. And like that's quite a lot of peace for me. So although probably breaking down probably isn't the best thing to do on your own, I think I definitely did struggle with it, but I think I coped with it better maybe than some other people might have, because I was kind of not used to it, but I think I'm quite well equipped to be on my own.
Mm-hmm. So what happened then from, between uni and coming into kind of where you are today? Did you go back to treatment or?
So after university, I think I came home, I would have been 19. So I went back to where I was working before I left for university. And I stayed there for a little while, just kind of to have a bit of like normality and routine in my life. And the people that I worked with there, they'd seen me when I'd been really ill before, so they were really supportive of me. They were like a second family, so that was really nice for me to be able to have that security at home as well. And I did go to the doctors a few times, but they make you do this self-referral, and you do a questionnaire over the phone, and then they put you in like a stress management course for 6 weeks with a group of people, and I really didn't want to go and do that, so I never really went much further than that. And then sort of the year that I turned 21 was quite a bad year for me. I'd started using drugs quite frequently, maybe once or twice a month, so not loads, but enough that it was taking quite a toll on my body. I wouldn't say that I have like bipolar disorder or anything, but I was definitely very manic for a lot of the year. Like I was just on one all the time and I could not rest. I felt, when you just feel crazy, like I could not calm my brain down at all. And I was just like running on empty all the time. I'd moved out to a flat, and I loved living there and everything, but I just like doing things like a food shop, I wouldn't go and do that. I was just religiously like cleaning the flat. It was always immaculate. I don't really know. It was just so many different things. I just wasn't coping at all. But I'd met my partner that year, and things got sort of more serious, I'd say probably towards the beginning of the year when I moved out. And as the year went on, I think he realised that I really wasn't coping very well, like with anything in general. And obviously, when you have a partner, you want a healthy partner. Like obviously he'll be there to support me when I'm not well, but nobody wants to spend their time with someone who's not coping well with life. Like you want to have someone that you can enjoy life with. And I think he kind of saw the potential in me a little bit and was like, well, you need to get help. Like you're someone I want to spend my time with, but like I can't spend my time with you while you're destroying yourself, if that kind of makes sense. It's not in a horrible way to him at all, but I think he genuinely just didn't want to see me in that much pain. So he actually offered to pay for my therapy for me. So I started seeing a therapist that year, and that was 2 years ago now. So I've been in therapy for 2 years, and it's literally like the best thing I've ever done for myself. But I think I'd burnt myself out so much that there wasn't actually another way for me to carry on apart from accepting the help that he was giving me. And for me that was really huge, because I'd never actually really been given help by someone else. I think obviously my mum had helped me when I was younger, but for someone to like physically offer, like, I will take you to therapy, I will pay for your therapy, like you just have to turn up and go, like to accept that from someone as well, kind of, I think that just showed me that I really needed it as well. Like I was willing to accept that help. Like I just couldn't go on the way I was living.
Do you think that like before he offered that was kind of like your rock bottom? Was there like a rock bottom moment where you knew that you needed to change, or was it more like a quiet acceptance?
I think it was a quiet acceptance. We'd had a few conversations about it before where, like, because he'd had some hypnotherapy for like anger management, I think, and it helped him quite a lot. So just hearing that someone else had gone through it and it had helped them as well, I think, I wouldn't say it was trendy, but like quite a lot of my friends at school, I did have a lot of mental health issues, that, like, my close friends, but none of us really got that much help, and I think that was just a reflection of the help that wasn't there. It wasn't our fault, but I didn't actually see anyone like getting through their problem. So to see someone had gone through it and got like out the other side of it was, and then to offer it to me and it be that same person, I think that made me kind of realize that it would work, or it could work maybe, and that it was worth a try. And it wasn't like he pressured me like, you must go to therapy every week for a year. It was just like, just see how it goes. Just try it for a little while. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it, but like at least give it a go. And I think just going in with that mindset of being open towards it, but maybe not feeling like pressured into it was really good for me. Because when I first had my eating disorder treatment, obviously being under the age of 18, I kind of had to go to treatment, and it wasn't, my mum did help me a lot and she was a really good emotional support, but we just didn't have the tools then to actually like see me through it properly. And I think being able to be older and see that the treatment I had before was maybe not the right treatment, or I was not provided for, like accepting that and realizing that I can get help. I'm not just someone that they've signed off, like I am actually able to get help, was really good. So I think it was kind of like a gradual realization of the fact that I need to do something about it. And I think also my partner is 13 years older than me and he's achieved quite a lot in his life, and seeing him get to that point in his life, I didn't want to see myself be his age and not have anything behind me.
Yeah. That makes sense. So you go to your therapist, and I'm guessing that's when the real changes start to come. What age are you at this point?
I'm 20. When I started therapy, I was 22.
22.
Yeah. So I think I had the benefit of being older as well and being maybe a little bit more not experienced with mental health, but I think I kind of knew my experiences and kind of where I needed help. I think if I'd have gone when I was 18 or 19, I probably wouldn't have known what to do while I was there, because I think obviously your therapist is there to guide you, but it's quite self-led therapy as well. So you have to have some sort of idea of what you want to be doing. So I think from that point to this point, the first sort of year of therapy was really dark for me, but I think that was just unearthing a lot of all the things that I hadn't sort of taken out of their box for such a long time. And I do think like that's one thing people don't realize is therapy can be really hard sometimes as well. It's not you go to your therapist and they fix you, it's continual work. So I think sort of in this last year of therapy, I've seen such like a big difference in myself. Like I've got a different therapist now and I've been seeing her for a couple of months. So just moving on from my old therapist to a new one as well. Like before that probably would have freaked me out. Like, oh, I know this person, why would I go to a different person? But I feel a lot more sort of in the flow of things now, whereas before I was really like swimming against everything, whereas now I can just go with it and it's not a problem. Whereas before, like the tiniest of things would probably just trigger me and it would just be ridiculous. Whereas now if I see a trigger, I could be like, well, why is that triggering me? And I can just go about my day after. I haven't got to let it affect my whole being.
Yeah, you can kind of take yourself out of your emotional mind and look at it in a
Mm.
logical point of view. And that's one of the most powerful things you can do when it comes to things like therapy. It's being able to detach yourself from that emotional mind, because the emotional mind is really useful for us. It has been in the past, because it's the thing that made us run when we saw like a big bear.
Yeah.
But it also makes us quite stupid. So when we're trying to come for like trying to help ourselves in in an emotional way, we end up kind of almost doing like the opposite. So that rational mind and that logical brain is really important for us to be able to step into in therapy.
Yeah.
So what has been the best bit of advice you've received, or whether it be a treatment or somebody saying something, or like, what is there something that you can pinpoint that really resonates with you that you want to share?
It's not necessarily something else, but probably a realization that I came to, and I really hold it like in me quite frequently. It's quite specific, but I always used to say to myself, I'm not anorexic, I have anorexia. And just taking myself out of the disorder, I'm not that thing. It's part of me, but it wasn't me. And I can say that about so many different things now. Like, I feel anxious, but I feel anxiety, but I'm not anxious, or different things like that. Just like you say, with the emotional mind, being able to detach yourself from whatever it is the issue, and knowing that you're still you regardless of what that problem is. So I think I probably first started saying that probably about 4 years ago. And it's something, when I do my talks for the charity, I always sort of end on that note. But I think it's a massive thing for people to be able to realize, like, you are you, you're not all the other things around you that people are putting labels on you, or you're putting a label on yourself. Like, it just really helped me realize that I don't actually have to be that person. I don't have to be the anorexic person. I can be Laura.
I love that. I love that. I think that's brilliant. And I think it's probably a really powerful way of, like you said, coming out of that, like stepping into that emotional mind as well. That logical mind, because I think we're so, in life, everybody's so quick to define each other. So you look at somebody and you put them into a box, and actually we aren't really made to be fit into boxes, really. So I love that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I think it gives you a lot of trust in yourself as well, like to be able to say, like, I'm still me despite all the other stuff going on. It instills a lot of trust, like, within you as a person. So I don't know how else to describe that, but yeah. Sorry for interrupting.
No, interrupt away, go for it. So I guess tell us a little bit about where you are now. Obviously you've done this, you're working with Beat as a young ambassador. So you might want to talk about that. You might want to talk about your tattoo. You can do both.
So obviously with Beat, I actually started working with them 4 years ago, but it's only probably been the last 2 years that I've felt really solid in myself to be able to step up and help other people with that. I think that's such a big accountability thing for me in my recovery. Like, I know I can't give other people advice about eating disorders if I'm not recovered myself, because it's a bit hypocritical of me. So that really, like, holds me accountable. But I think being able to see, like, physical change, like in the way that people have their treatment. Sorry, my dog's just barked.
That is absolutely brilliant. Your dog has just opened the door.
She does it all the time.
That is amazing.
She's like Dexter, but she's black.
Is she a Labradoodle?
No, she's a Black Russian Terrier.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just going to shut the door.
Amazing. That is brilliant. Oh my gosh, she's beautiful. I love her.
Yeah. No, she's mastered that skill of opening doors.
Well, she's the perfect height, to be fair. How old is she? What's her name? Sorry?
Jess.
Jess.
Yeah.
Amazing.
She's so funny.
Jess just wanted to be included. She just wanted to take part. I get it, Jess. I get it.
Yeah, she's quite happy now. She's up on the bed.
Brilliant.
I can't remember where I was now.
So you're talking about Beat and how you've been working there for 4 years, but the last 2 you've really felt like you were able to help more because you feel like you've been in a better place.
Oh yeah. We do a lot of like talking opportunities, so there will be training days for like healthcare professionals, and I'll sort of go along for like half an hour, and I'll sort of give my experience of my recovery and what I've found useful or not useful. So kind of equipping people with how to treat eating disorders on a more personal level. But like the most rewarding one I done was last Christmas. It's called Developing Dolphins, and it's for carers and parents of people with eating disorders, and it kind of gives them the skills to be able to help their loved one and be more understanding towards them. And it was such a tough day, and I went for the whole day, which was really interesting. So the trainer, I think it was a 10 till 4 o'clock training session, and they talk through like different types of disorders, how they manifest, but this one was really specific to Christmas time, so it was kind of getting a plan in place for people to be able to cope with Christmas and still enjoy Christmas as a family, despite the fact that their loved one probably has an eating disorder. And hearing all the parent stories and seeing like how grateful they were for me to share my experience with them so that they could understand their daughter or their son more, that was like probably the best feeling I've ever had, like to be able to help those people like on a personal level. I think because a lot of the time I do like general talks to like healthcare professionals, or like I've spoken to my MP member before and stuff, you don't always see like the ground level changes that happen, and you don't forget about it, but it's maybe not the most important thing when you're talking about your experience. But when you can speak to people who are directly affected by it and see that information you're giving them, like they're really going to use it and take it on board, like I just think that's the most rewarding thing like anyone can ever do. So that's filled me with so much purpose, like to be able to do stuff like that. Yeah, so I love doing it, and I don't think I'll ever stop being an ambassador for Beat. So I just think they're an amazing charity. Like if you've got any concerns, there's so much information on their website. Like there's so many blog posts from other people that have suffered. There's so many ways that you can connect. Whether you have an eating disorder, you know someone, it's your daughter, it's your girlfriend, you want to go and get help but you don't know how. Like there's so much there that Beat provide, and I'm just like really proud to actually be a part of what they're providing. So yeah, then that sort of led me on. Last summer I did a TV interview. They released a new study they've done about genetics and anorexia, so some people might be more predisposed to having anorexia because of a certain way their thyroid works, I think. So I went on TV and did my spiel about anorexia, and my old sixth form head contacted me, and they have like a new therapy service in the sixth form. So one of our local psychotherapists, he's retired, but he's just volunteering his time. So I go in with him on a Tuesday, and I did my mental health first aid training. So I sort of do drop-ins with the sixth formers if they need someone to talk to urgently, and then he does the actual therapy sessions with them. So that's been really eye-opening for me as well, and it's kind of led me, well, it was leading me on to wanting to either become like a coach or a therapist. I'm not really sure what way I wanted to go with it. But the other day I had a bit of a light bulb moment and was like, oh, I'm going to be a paramedic now. So I'm still debating what I want to do with all of that. But it's just like, as you do yourself, like it's such a rewarding thing to be able to be that person, not providing it, but sort of holding space for someone else. So yeah, that's definitely like a big part of me as a person. Like I definitely pride myself on all of that. yeah, and it's something that I want to definitely develop more in the future. So that sort of got me to where I am now as well.
Yeah, and you should pride yourself in it, because it's incredible. You know, the stuff that you do is really amazing. And like you said, Beat are in a fantastic organization, and really, really, like, just the resources they have are amazing. So, you know, to be able to work with them at any level is brilliant. So yeah, you should be very proud of yourself.
Thank you.
So I guess to finish off then, you mentioned about the best bit of advice the best kind of way that you work. Have you got any last little nuggets or of wisdom, or anything that you want to tell somebody who may be listening, who perhaps really connects with your story in one way or another?
Probably what my advice for myself was as well, but also like you're worth that amount of help. Like, whatever help you need, you're definitely worth it, even if you don't think it, even if the GP's turned you away 10 times. Like, you just keep fighting to get whatever help you need. Like, it is out there, and it's quite exhausting trying to find it sometimes, but it will come along, and you'll get to that point in life where you think, okay, like, I can do this. Like, just to trust yourself, and trust the process. Like, 5 years ago, I would not have seen myself where I am now, and it's really hard, like, to think, oh, it's okay, everything will be okay in the future, but like, really, things do get better. So just trust, like, just have trust in everything. Like, everything will work out. I read a book recently, and it said everything is perfect. So while I think they use the analogy of like an acorn and a tree. So the acorn is perfect, but it's not a complete tree. So everything is perfect as it is, and everything will always be perfect as it is. Even if it's really messy and chaotic or whatever, it's not complete yet, but it's your perfect path that you will be on.
I love that. That's really good. Really good. So thank you so much for just being you, firstly. But also thank you for your time today. It's been so wonderful to talk to you.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to share my story.
You're more than welcome. It's my pleasure.